Welcome to the show, IB Nation Sports Talk. We are up and running along with Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers. And, it's been a while since we've had a Thursday show because of Notre Dame's women's basketball season. And based on the number of people who are in here with us live right now, I don't know if it's from what Father David Penny says is we've got multiple shows going at the same time. I just texted Brian to let him know that we're starting our show. So who knows what we're doing tonight. How are you?
Well, hopefully Brian can throw up a lob and just tell everyone to go on over to this show as soon as he wraps up, whenever he decides to wrap it on up.
Yes, that is very true. And I want to say they might have started around 2:00, something like that.
It's a long show.
I thought they'd be done by now for sure.
Well, it is Combine Day, so I'm assuming there's lots of Combine talk.
Speaking of which, I've got NFL Network on in my room here, and Isaiah Foskey, the defensive linemen, have been going today. Foskey at the Combine had a 34-inch vertical jump as well as a 10-foot 5-inch standing broad jump. So I guess, fairly average, nothing that really was outstanding. And I saw Daniel Jeremiah, or I heard just before we went on, Daniel Jeremiah predicting Isaiah as an early second day guy is what he was saying on NFL Network.
Yeah, based on what you were saying there, those aren't like wow numbers. Those aren't like catch your eye numbers. Those are very just kind of check the box kind of numbers, just to make sure you're not coming into too short, I guess is the way to do it with the vertical and the broad jump. But yeah, those aren't just like wow numbers. So, hopefully there's going to be more drills. So hopefully Foskey can do more to kind of, differentiate himself for the pack. But I agree with you. I think at best he's a late first round. That's at very best. And you'll probably, we'll probably see him go in round 2 and potentially even 3. It's just hard to say because, there's talented players, but it's just a matter of fit and where other guys are taken and, yada, yada, yada. So,
yeah. And I mean, he's someone who could really stand to benefit from really good testing, but hasn't, just with those results right there, not necessarily great in the early going anyway. They're doing the, different pad shuttles and all that kind of stuff right now, stuff that, not necessarily is going to elevate his stock, I don't think, quite that much. But in any case, so Isaiah Foskey at the Combine, and we'll talk about Isaiah Foskey and, some other stuff coming up in rapid fire in a little bit as well. I'm, of course, in Greensboro, North Carolina, day 2 in Greensboro. And yesterday I mentioned that the Notre Dame women did their practice at Guilford College yesterday, and Larry sent us this message before the show started. World Be Free. Do you have any idea? Have you heard of World Be Free, Jesse?
I have no clue what that's in reference to.
He's you're a young pup, but it's like it's funny that you're in Cleveland because when World Be Free played in the NBA for several teams, but the one that I think about him the most is with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think of him as a Cleveland Cavalier, like early 80s. I think World Be Free was in Cleveland. And Larry said that Guilford College, Division III, and I think back then it was even NAIA, is where World B started out. I did not realize that when I was there yesterday. Brian Driscoll.
Do you know where Brian Driscoll made his first career college reception?
I'm going to say Guilford College.
You are correct.
Nice.
You are correct.
Answers to all these trivia questions. Brian pops in, Brian pops out. He is gone. Apparently, they've wrapped up their show.
I had to let everybody know that we Sean and you're going to find this shocking, Sean. Sean Davis and I went over our time on a show. I know you're going to be
say,
floored by that.
Did you go around 4 hours today? Is
Yeah,
that what
because
you
we
ended up
started at
doing?
2.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, our mailbag was very long.
Apparently so.
Yes.
A lot of good questions.
We
though.
did make sure I saw it was 6 o'clock. It's like, okay, we got to get out of here. Everybody get over to Sean's show. And then I jumped in and Jesse's like, doesn't know who World Be Free is. So that was like strike one. You're bringing the gentleman. Come on, man.
Perfect timing.
Killing me.
And then
killing me.
Guilford College.
That's
as it
right.
turns out,
So
of
who
all
knew?
places.
Who knew?
Yeah, no
Have a
kidding.
great show, guys.
All right.
Good to
Thanks,
see you,
Brian.
Ryan.
All right. So Brian Driscoll, first career reception, Guilford College, where the Notre Dame women practiced yesterday. They're going to face North Carolina State tomorrow. The Wolfpack beat Syracuse today. They scored 54 points in the paint in their game today. The Wolfpack did against Syracuse. So interesting matchup coming up tomorrow. Lauren Ebo didn't play the first game against the Wolfpack, but she will be back in action tomorrow here at the ACC Women's Basketball Tournament. 2 o'clock tip-off time, Eastern time. Got that coming up tomorrow. One other interesting note, speaking of being here in Greensboro in the women's tournament, I'm sure, Jesse, you've heard of the Cavender twins from the University of Miami.
Yeah, I heard that one of them, at least one of them, was in some trouble. I don't know or potential trouble. I don't know if that affected both of them.
There was some recruitment, thing going on with a, pre-existing relationship with a booster. Like they knew this person, something, down at Miami, and so Miami got a little bit of a probation, but Miami is staying in this hotel, so they are here. And earlier today, I got on the elevator, and this guy gets on wearing all Miami gear, and we start talking, and it turns out he's their dad. And not just that, he's from South Bend. He was born in South Bend, went to St. Joseph High School in South Bend, was actually a high school teammate of Kevin Corrigan, the longtime Notre Dame men's lacrosse coach. So
very interesting. Small world.
That's right. His wife, I think he said, is from Watervliet, Michigan. Little Michigan town there in what would that be? Southwestern Michigan. So interesting. Very interesting. Tommy Guns is looking for some whiteboard breaking down Tommy's different duo run plays. That's a term I hadn't heard before Brian started saying that.
I mean, the main thing about duo is it allows the running back to make their read and cut based off of a second level defender as opposed to a first level defender and run scheme. So like basically if the defense fits it and does what they're supposed to in their gaps, it allows the running back to kind of break it and then get that one-on-one matchup with the defensive back. But really all duo does is you're reading the second level defender, aka maybe a safety walk down in the box or an inside linebacker. So that's really all duo means. Yeah. If I had whiteboard, I could, but I wasn't prepared. But that's all duo is.
Much more. That's imaginary whiteboard. Visualize the whiteboard. Salty, yes, my bed is a mess. This is what happens when I get to stay by myself for a few days in a hotel room. I don't have to make the bed. I can just do what I want. The housekeeping came yesterday. They did not come at all today. So, the trash is also starting to pile up a little bit. Let's put it that way. And Derek, to answer your question, no, I did not stick my foot in my mouth with the dad. I did not. And D-Hawk, Orioles and Pirates playing in the bottom of the ninth without umpires. Did you hear about that, Jesse?
No, I didn't actually.
I want to. I guess the umpires just took off after the 8th inning of a spring training game this week. And so the catcher for, I can't remember if it was Adley Rushman for the Orioles or who it was, the catcher just called balls and strikes for the ninth because, whichever team wanted to make sure that they got this relief pitcher an inning of work. And so the umpires were gone. They called balls and strikes themselves. And
that's a true honor system right there.
Yeah.
Also, I heard, it's been a busy week already for you in Greensboro. Mr. Matt Packer released an apology. Sorry, Mark Packer
Yeah.
released an apology to Neil Ivey this weekend. I think you have a large part to do with that. You and some others from the media made sure he heard it after, and I understand that if he doesn't agree with the decision, but you don't publicly do that, and you have to give, Neil Ivey her respect and her credit. So
He
I
did
thought it was a little
apologize.
unprofessional, but I think, you have a large part of that apology.
Like I said, it was kind of my tweet that got the snowball, the ball rolling on this whole thing, with the backlash. He was responding to my tweet. He was responding to Michaela Mabry, the Irish assistant's tweets at him, and, things blew up. Tyler Horka also, tweeted some stuff. He tweeted the whole thing, what Packer originally said, and we played it here on the show yesterday. But after that NC State Syracuse game, he came on and he started off the next segment with an apology. He said basically he got home, he rewatched it, he realized that he should have spent more of the focus actually talking about the accomplishments of Neil Ivey and this team, which is completely, what we were saying and the point that I think everyone was trying to make. There was too little time actually spent on the merits of what Neil Ivey did with this team this year, as opposed to, really kind of making it sound like, he was knocking him down, and it should have been Carol Lawson. And by the way, I looked at the voting today because the ACC didn't actually send out a media release, but they put up, the all conference and all they put the vote tabulations on the story on their website, and Neil got, I think it was 211 votes. And I believe Carol Lawson was somewhere around 147. And then the third place guy, Kenny Brooks from Virginia Tech, was like 142. So like Mark Packer is making all these points about how he thought it was Carol Lawson, but Lawson, and I'm not taking anything away from her by saying this, but she was closer to the third place vote getter than she was to Neil Ivey, who ended up winning the thing. So.
Yeah, and I think T-Guns brings up a funny point. He probably got a little phone call from the good old ACC network, and they probably said, hey, you might want to reevaluate what you got going on right now.
And that's, and USMA 87 said he got the call from the ACC and needed his job. I mean, that is, do I know for a fact that happened? No. Do I know that formal complaints were lodged about the way he conducted himself? I do. So, I'm sure it had more to do with just getting home and rewatching his segment on TV and deciding, man, I didn't handle that very well. So, yeah, I think he was probably told to do that. And, one way or another, he did it. He did it on TV. The problem is, far fewer people were watching after the NC State Syracuse game than were watching to see what was going to happen during those award shows the other day.
Right. I think you, if he's in Greensboro, you might have to stop by. Say hey.
He's there. He's there. Their set is like right, probably about 50 feet from where I'll be set up calling the game tomorrow. So I'll have to see. Stop by and say hi.
I bet Mike Brey wishes he was doing as well as Neil Ivey is doing this season.
Well, Mike Brey had a good night last night, though, right? I mean,
I saw some of those pictures. I don't know if I've ever seen Mike Brey have that much fun.
He brought the party, is what he did. Could you believe that they beat Pittsburgh like that?
I can't, but my money did, because I won a hefty amount of money off of Mike Brey sealing it down his last home game inside Purcell Pavilion. I was banking on that happening. I thought, last game for Mike Brey, senior night with all those seniors that they have. And I was just glad. Yeah, I had a good hunch that, that line was juiced. They were the underdogs, and I took it and won some good coin off of it.
USMA 87, by the way, says I should challenge Mark Packer to a wrestling match. And I can tell you this with confidence. I don't know what Mark Packer did in high school, but like the way my shoulders feel and all the other issues that I've got, like he is one guy I would say, yes, give me 2 minutes and I would win that match.
Set up a little courtside ring.
That's right. But Mike Brey, 391st career home game at Purcell Pavilion last night and his 315th win. So Pitt led for all of 37 seconds. But, it was one of those, they get up by 20, and then it's like, what did it get all the way down to 4 at one point? Like, is this going to
the game
away?
was a marathon, and I saw they got up big, and I honestly didn't want to keep checking because I knew that it was going to get closer and closer and closer. And a common theme for this team this year is blowing games late at the end. North Carolina, I saw, and in some other games too. So I was just, I'm one of those people now where when I place bets, I don't like to watch them. And then when I saw they got up 20, I was like, I just don't want to jinx it. So I stopped. I stopped. And then, the thing about it was the game felt like it went on for 3 hours. I texted you. I got like 4 miles in on the treadmill. I came home. I took a shower. I ate dinner. And the game was still going on. I just kept waiting for that notification that the game had ended so I could just see if they won or not.
So many free throws, so many fouls kept stopping the clock at the end of the game. That was one of the larger or longer college basketball games I've seen in a while. It just went on.
They
and
wanted
on.
Brey.
I was just mostly hanging on, to see if they showed much at the end of the game. They really didn't. They kind of showed him waving a little bit. I guess he went and did his radio post-game interview, didn't do a press conference, did his thing, headed straight over to the backer, had some shots, drank some Guinness. I guess
Do you believe that's his first time ever going to the backer?
I think it's crazy. We were talking about it last night. It doesn't. It's like that guy is. He's got some of his own haunts that he goes to. Notoriously, and it's just amazing that he had never been to the backer, and he made it. I guess he was only there for about an hour and a half, and then he went over to the Morris to Roars and. Like his former players and stuff like that were there. So he did that, which, you can understand.
Right.
That. I mean, the pictures I saw, it was like after a football game. Linebacker packed.
It was packed in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Notre Dame students were complaining about it, though.
Hey, I mean, like what I was wondering is like, was he going to walk in and just open up the tab and, like drinks on me? I didn't hear any of that kind of stuff, but sounded like he was socializing quite a bit. All right, well, hit the like button if you would. We've been here for a while at this point. And, of course, subscribe, rate, review, and all that. Leave us a comment, whatever you'd like to do. We do appreciate it, and it does help out Irish Breakdown. Let's talk a little bit of football now that we've talked about everything else, kind of to start things off. I mean, Marcus Freeman and the offensive staff, it's almost all officially in place at this point. We know Jared Parker's the offensive coordinator. We know Gino Guidugli is the new quarterback's coach. I would ring a bell if I had one that I actually said it right the first time today, for the first time in a while. Joe Rudolph, of course, not official, but he's going to be the new offensive line coach. So a month ago, the state, you still had Tommy Reese as the offensive coordinator and quarterback's coach, and you had Harry Hiestand as the offensive line coach, Jared Parker as the tight ends coach, and now it's Parker, OC, tight ends, Gino Guidugli, quarterback coach, and Joe Rudolph as the offensive line coach. So, like, what's your confidence in this trio compared to the old trio that we had just a month ago before Tommy Reese took off?
Compared to a month ago, I'm not gonna lie, I'm more concerned than what I was, and I think that's me just kind of getting, caught up and complacent with what was already there, right? And so anytime there's a change, there's always going to be a fear of, is it going to be better or at least as good as what was previously here? And so again, I am not more confident now than I was a month ago. And I think that's not going to change until we see them at spring practice. And really, you're not even going to see a lot at spring practice. So really my confidence is going to come game 1 of next season. And until then,
Maybe.
you're going to have to prove me otherwise, because I don't know enough about Jared Parker. It's not like he has an offense that's, consistently in the college football landscape. When you lose Harry Hiestand, who has arguably, been the best assistant at Notre Dame over the last decade, considering, his guys that have made it to the NFL, the All-Pro status, the Pro Bowl status, and some of these guys are going to end up being Hall of Famers by the time it's all said and done. And so there wasn't going to be any, topping or beating what Harry Hiestand brought to the program. Maybe the recruiting, because I know he wasn't a fan of recruiting, and I think that was one of his, least favorite things to do, is being on the road and constantly recruiting. And I think really the only thing I feel better about or positive about out of this situation is the fact that they now have a committed, pure quarterbacks coach. And I think, again, that still needs to be proven, because quarterback development has been one of the bigger issues at Notre Dame over the last decade as well. So, I'm not any more confident in these guys than I was Tommy Rees and Harry Hiestand, largely because of the stuff I talked about. And I just don't think that it's going to change until I see them actually play and see what the results look like. So
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
just unfortunate, but that's just how it's going to be when you have a lot of guys. I mean, especially an offensive coordinator who just isn't really proven yet.
Yeah, it's like I don't necessarily doubt these guys, and I don't doubt these guys. I think they'll do a pretty good job, but there's just no history. Like if I went, what am I most confident in? And what am I most concerned about? One of my biggest concerns is you've got an offensive coordinator who, yeah, he's called some plays and he's done some stuff, but now it's like he literally has to put together whatever his offense is. He has to put together a whole offense now. And now, thankfully, he doesn't have to worry about calling plays and stuff like that. Well, I guess he'll do it in the blue gold game. That'll kind of be his test run. But, like you said, it's not going to be for real until Navy. So he's got several months to go with that. But what's that going to look like? He didn't get, he was running Neil Brown's offense at West Virginia when he did get to actually have the keys to the car. So, that's my biggest concern. I do like what you're talking about with Gaduli, because you've got a dedicated quarterback coach now and a quarterback coach with a track record. Like Desmond Ridder is still sort of the big name. I think that we can kind of underrate what Tommy Rees was able to do with really the last three quarterbacks, just because there were always some little things that we could kind of poke holes in and pick apart with Tommy Rees, how consistent things were. And again, going back to the Brian Kelly pairing and all that kind of stuff, like who was in charge of what, how much of that offense, all that different kind of stuff. But I am confident in Gaduli. I'm concerned about just the fact that Jared Parker is a really inexperienced coordinator, and that's what he's got to put. He's got to put this whole thing together now and make it all fit and make it all work.
Yeah, and I think another kind of underrated aspect of it is, the fact that they do have someone like Sam Hartman coming in. I think his experience is going to help maybe bridge that gap a little bit more with Parker and his offense, just considering how much experience that he has. But I mean, that's still another concern of mine too, is now you have a first-time offensive coordinator and you have a one and done quarterback that is just strictly here, for 1 year, so he can and try to debut, showcase that he can run a pro style offense and hopefully, get some NFL teams interested. But that's still another concern of mine, is because now you're building development for just 1 year with one offensive coordinator. And so you would hope that even though Sam Hartman is the starter, he's still kind of working and implementing his system for the guys behind him for the upcoming years. And I think that's going to be the most important thing this season is, yeah, you want success this season. Obviously, you play every year to win and go as far as possible. But really, I think the bigger focus is long-term, the marriage between Parker and the rest of the quarterbacks and how the system is going to be run.
Mm-hmm. I do like the fact that Parker was talking about, like in terms of his involvement with the quarterbacks. And we talked about this when we played some of his comments last week. Like he's not going to jump in so that whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Hartman or any of the young guys after Hartman, Buckner and Minchie and Carr and those guys, he's not going to jump in and, be like an extra voice, like you've got Gaduli over here and Parker over here, in one ear and the other ear. So, there's not too much going on there. He's going to when it comes to actually coaching the quarterbacks, as he said, he's going to have a pro do it. He's going to let Gaduli do it. He's going to handle that aspect, and his his role is going, obviously he's going to have to work with the quarterbacks still, but his role is going to be more about the overall big picture,
Right.
macro for the offense. Tyler with a super chat. Thank you, Tyler. Aren't you glad that we're playing Navy, Tennessee State, and Central Michigan before Ohio State? And I would say absolutely yes, because that definitely gives you, a 3-game lead up, but you also, like,
those are big risks that you can't
that's
lose
exactly
those games
right.
either. You lose one of those games and everyone's going to start calling for Parker already.
Oh my goodness.
It's either really good or really bad, but
And
it's
I mean,
good because
even
you
if
get to
it's
get your feet
close and
wet.
like if they don't score over 35 points in all 3 of those games and maybe even closer to 40, there's going to be, people are going to be having conniptions.
I do think what I am most confident about in Parker is that he's going to adapt a system that plays to the strengths of his personnel. And I think that's what I'm most excited to see, because that's what the biggest emphasis has been on from Freeman and Parker so far. But you can talk the talk, but I need to see you walk the walk. That's what I'm looking for in the offense this season, is what are they doing to specifically tailor what their personnel can do best? What are they doing to get their strong running back group more involved in the game? What are they doing to get, their offensive line and tight ends synced up to be able to run the ball? And how are they playing, play action and et cetera, coming off of, playing to what they do best. And I need to see that on a consistent basis.
Now, you've been through spring practice yourself, playing, play a football season in the fall, then you go through spring practice. How does the importance of spring football, do you think, change this spring football specifically due to these changes?
Oh, this has got to be the biggest spring practice that, honestly, on the offensive side of the ball, that they've had in maybe 4 or 5 years. Because anytime a new coordinator comes in, yeah, he was here last year, but I mean, this is your opportunity to showcase what you can do and why you deserve to move up the depth chart, essentially. In my opinion, when you get a new coordinator, it's all wiped clean, because I mean, that, like I said, there's tape of last year and he was around last year, but I mean, that goes all out the window. He's now OC, he's now calling plays, creating plays. And so you need to prove to him on an everyday basis what you can do and how valuable you are to the team. So I think this is a huge spring ball for everyone on the entire offensive side of the ball. I think anyone has a fair shot at, earning their playing time this season.
I absolutely agree. And, like, you've got a grad transfer quarterback coming in. You've got these young quarterbacks who are going to be there, who all basically everyone has to assimilate into this offense. The whole team now has to assimilate into the offense. Now, the verbiage and the terminology, that stuff apparently is going to stay mostly the same, but it's going to be different. And I agree. It's like probably you have to go back since Chip Long took over in the spring of 2017. So that's been 6 years, really the biggest spring since then, when all the coordinators changed in that offseason after going 4-8 the year before that. I think it's a huge spring. And again, I don't doubt that they'll be able, to do what they need to do, but it just adds a different layer on top of everything. Because again, like a year ago, not quite at this time, a year ago minus about a month, everyone's talking about consistency and staff and all that stuff. And look at where we are just a little bit more than a year later, how much turnover they've had in just a little bit more than a calendar.
Well, it's the turnover in addition to the unknown, and the unknown will fear a lot of people, reasonably so, because of what I was saying. Like, there's just you've never seen a fully run Parker offense in action. You've seen a little bit of bits and pieces,
Yeah.
but you haven't seen him.
No idea what it is.
Right. You don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know, how much is it going to differ from what they're used to, etc. Do I think he'll be okay? And do I think he'll do, a pretty solid job? Sure. But, I want to see him go to that next level. I want to see this offense, like I said, play to its strengths and really take over and win games when they need to. So that's really just all I'm concerned about.
Derek was asking if he wonders if they're going to do another spring draft this year. Do you remember that last year where they drafted teams and they made a big deal of it and all that?
We did that a couple times as well for our spring games.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did you think of that? Because like Tommy is saying, he wants to see ones versus ones.
Yeah, I mean, I like it because how I know how they did it for ours is they were like a group of captains for each team, and essentially you went position group by position group. You started with maybe running backs, and
that's what they did last year.
Right. Yeah. You would draft all the running backs, and then you move on to wide receivers, and then you move on to offensive linemen, defensive linemen. And I like it better because it's not strictly just a ones versus two things. You get a mix of ones versus ones, maybe ones versus twos, twos versus twos. To me, it's the most equal and balanced playing field. And in a spring game, you want to see competition. You want to see how guys are doing. And when it's strictly just ones versus twos and twos versus ones, then I think sometimes you get out of the aspect of it, the ones can ultimately just dominate the game. And so when you equal out the playing field and have a mix of ones and twos, I think it makes for the most competitive and most you get the most out of it. You get the most, you get quality film, you get a better understanding of kind of where everyone is at when you do it this way.
Interesting. Okay.
That's just my take on it.
Now, what do you so you're saying you just get a better read on everyone?
Yeah, because you have instances where ones are going against ones. It's not, of course, depth charts are for a reason. And so I'm not saying that, sometimes there's times where twos are better than one and one might not be as good as two, but predominantly the ones are the one for a reason. And so I want to see best on best and see how that's going to go, because I think it's a true test of how good the one really is if he has to go against the other one across from him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what everyone would like to see, especially when you do have a new offense out there. And Tommy says ones versus one first quarter, then mix things up the rest of the way. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing that either. I would like to see it. They're going to see the ones versus one. They'll be doing a lot of that in practice when nobody is, none of us are there to see it. So they'll get to see some of that. So I don't know what importance they'll place on doing it in a spring game that's going to be televised and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. But I touched on this a second ago, like the aspect of with Gino Guidugli. Now you've got, you had Tommy Rees, who was the quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, whereas now Parker, his position group is obviously the tight ends, and you've got Guidugli dedicated solely to the quarterbacks. He doesn't have to worry about calling plays and doing all this stuff. How much, is there benefit, do you think, in having a quarterback dedicated coach that doesn't have to worry about being the coordinator?
I do, because I think that there's instances where, quarterbacks go through things that are more like we've kind of said before on a micro level that like really a quarterback coach can help them through, right? Like maybe going through different kind of mechanics or release points, etc. And I think sometimes you just need, like, it becomes kind of suffocating when your OC is also your quarterback coach, because then who are you really like venting to, right? Like if you have a problem or you didn't have a good practice, like you're going to get it double because he's your quarterback coach and he's your offensive coordinator at the same time. So I think it's a good idea to kind of have like that release valve or that outlet for quarterbacks to kind of go to the quarterback coach at an intermediate level, maybe talk through some things, and then, proceed on to the offensive coordinator. I just think it allows for a little bit of a buffer that's only going to benefit the quarterbacks at the end of the day. Because, when I was playing, my defensive coordinator was also my linebacker coach. And at times I hated him because he's so intense and so attention to detail, which is fine. But like when you're frustrated, you're dealing with the same person twice, right?
That's true.
There's no in between.
It's not like you can go to the defensive line coach and start bitching about your position coach / coordinator. It's like, yeah. So if you have somebody else, and not that it's all about complaining or whatever. I get what you're saying. I hadn't really thought about it in that aspect, but that does provide another buffer there, and maybe that's good for the quarterbacks ultimately.
I do think so, and I think it's just largely. Like when you're playing, you just want that kind of person here and there to just kind of, even if you're doing bad, you still want to be able to release those kind of frustrations and talk through it with someone. And I'm not saying that you can't do it with Jared Parker, but it's at a different level. It's a different kind of conversation when you're talking to, your coordinator compared to your position coach. There's just a different kind of level to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like, I just think that big picture as well, a position as important as the quarterback, with as much, especially for like in this case where you've got with all the stuff that we've talked about with Jared Parker being really not a first time coordinator, but still relatively new to being a coordinator, with all that he's going to have to do. I think that it helps having, okay, I've got this guy with experience. He's going to work with the quarterbacks. And again, Parker as the coordinator gets to deal with the bigger picture stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it takes off a lot. It takes off the responsibility and pressure that he's already facing as a first-year offensive coordinator.
And then again, like the coordinator, middle of a game can like step and deal with all the different position groups as well. And again, like the most important position on the field, he's got one guy who can deal with that. Like I think it can be nothing but good, especially here early on, as Jared Parker kind of gets this thing going as Notre Dame's offensive coordinator. Jeff wants to know, in 2023, should there be a red zone package for Tyler Buchner?
Oh, yeah.
Pros, cons to this. Hartman does have mobility, just not Tyler Buchner mobility. What do you think?
I mean, I've been advocating it, ever since the discussion has been what's playing time looking like for Hartman and Buchner after the transfer. And I'm 100% on board that just because Hartman might be the starter, I definitely think there's got to be packages built in for Buchner, just because of what he forces safeties and linebackers to have to do with being a run threat. You have to make them, respect the box and step down on play action. And so, and Tyler Buchner proved last season that his throwing game improved. So it's not like when Tyler Buchner is in the game, it's just going to be a straight run, but you still have to honor his run game. And when you get down in the red zone, you have the running backs that they do, have the tight ends that they do. I'm 100%, advocating for that. I think that there needs to be some sort of, inside the 30, inside the 20 kind of Tyler Buchner packages. And I'm not saying you have to run it every time you get into the red zone or inside the 20, but I think it's something that should be used because of he can throw the ball efficiently and he can use his legs efficiently. And when you add, two other running backs, tight ends, whatever, it's going to be hard. It's just another thing you have to account for. And I think it's going to make the defenses a step slower. And again, kind of respect the box in terms of the run game.
I agree. I agree with all of it. I mean, just look what he did in the Gator Bowl in the run zone and now in the red zone. I mean, now look, I'm not saying that, and we've kind of talked about this. Maybe it's been with Vince, I think you and I maybe a little bit, like we've talked about it. I'm not saying this is going to be a package that looks like what Tyler Buchner was running when he was, Jack Cohn's, the package quarterback when Jack Cohn was here. He's whatever it is, it's like he's running the full offense, but because he's Tyler Buchner and he has the wheels that he has, there's another element to the offense. So like you're running the full offense, but because you're Tyler Buchner, you're bringing a different element that Sam Hartman doesn't bring when you're down in the red zone. That's what I would be for.
Yeah.
I'm looking. Sean, are you a dump and chase or puck possession guy? Derek,
isn't that a hockey question?
It is a hockey question, and every once in a while he throws in a hockey question for some reason. I'm not really sure why.
He must know that you bought Hockey for Dummies back in the day.
Yeah, that's right.
When you had to cover a couple hockey games here.
Oh my gosh, I had I don't follow hockey. It's not that I don't like hockey. I've said before, like I would love to have played hockey growing up, but in Kansas they didn't have it, and so I know nothing about hockey. And there were a couple times a few years back that the station decided the regular hockey play-by-play guy was gone, so I was going to call some hockey games, and I did. I bought Hockey for Dummies to try to all the terminology. It's like how do you cram for hockey when you don't know? Part of it is just the terminology. Any game is like just knowing the terminology, the lingo, that kind of stuff, and it doesn't trip off your tongue very easily if you don't follow it. So
I gotta be to Aaron to answer. I know he didn't ask me, but I'm a puck possession kind of guy. I'm not a dump and chase. Dumping it down by the goal, chasing around, trying to get a shot. I'm not about that. I like top of the ice. Kind of from I think it's the blue line or red line. One of the lines from the top. A lot of passing it around and getting good, clean shots off. So
see, and
my
that's the
answer.
thing too, is like I don't like the hand signals, from officials. Like basketball and football, like pretty much know all of those. But in hockey, with the hand signals, they just stop and it's like, they don't really tell you what's going on. And if you don't know the hand signals,
and skate around.
Yeah.
To me, the hardest part about hockey is I understand it's a white ice and black puck, but it's still so hard to follow the puck if you're not an everyday watcher.
Yeah.
It's hard to I think
true.
that hockey, and I've seen this before, I think that hockey should implement on TV like a little puck tracker thing, so like where the puck is headed to, because I can't see it at times, and all of a sudden there's just a freaking shot off, and you're like, oh, okay. And another thing I didn't realize is the aspect of like hockey. A lot of times a strategy is, and not to get too off topic here, a big strategy is, guys will kind of stand in front of the goal and they'll rip shots and a guy will just try to deflect it in. And I didn't really kind of realize the importance of that guys are often kind of just trying to tip shots or deflect shots in right in front of the goal to kind of, get the goalie off track. But what do I know?
Yeah. Well, what do any of us know? I guess. All right. Well, with that, Jess, are you ready for rapid fire?
I am ready for rapid fire.
All right. So let's do this. First question for the night. Double fill in the blank. You felt blank about the Notre Dame football program 2 weeks ago, and you feel blank about it today.
I felt concerned about the football program a couple of weeks ago, and I feel the same today. And I say concerned as in there's just a lot of unproven things. And so I don't feel any differently about it now compared to 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. And that's just solely because I need to see it. I need to see a lot of, the changes that are going to be implemented. I need to see what Parker's system is all about. And again, I think concerned is maybe too hard of a word, but it's unproven. And so I feel that they're unproven, and I still feel the same about it now. And unfortunately, we can talk about it and, say what we think is going to happen, but until it actually happens, that's all it's going to be, is just kind of everyone's kind of hypothesis about, what's going to change, what's going to stay the same, what's going to get better, and what's potentially going to get worse.
Yeah, exactly. And
I have full faith in Marcus Freeman and, who he's bringing on and their character. And if Marcus Freeman believes in him, then I believe him. I believe that this offense is going to be good. But until they show me that, it's only going to be a belief.
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of trepidation, right? Because of all the stuff that was going on. I guess it's been about 2 weeks now since Jared Parker was announced. So maybe even, closer to 3 weeks ago, but on the heels with all the stuff that was going on with the Ludwig stuff and just things blowing up in Notre Dame's faces and the horrible PR and just every, conflicting reports. And then you've got the email from Jack Swarbrick. You've got the response at the press conference from Marcus Freeman. And people are still asking about it today, so what was the story? Why all this conflicting stuff? And, so it was just such a bad look for Notre Dame with all that stuff going on. So it was to me, a very uneasy feeling about Notre Dame, because it just didn't seem like things were jiving and matching up with where they were supposed to be. So now, a couple of weeks later, even though, as we said, there are questions that Jared Parker is going to have to answer. There are questions that Joe Rudolph is going to have to answer. And we'll see how that goes. But I do feel like just getting to talk with Jared Parker and hear his comments at that press conference, I do feel like this is a guy who's really sharp, who knows his stuff, and Brian has written and said a lot about him as well. So I think this is a guy who can work out. But again, this is like in his career, first real big challenge for him that he's going to have to figure a lot of different things out. So there are still some questions, but I at least right now going into spring, until we see otherwise, I think that there is at least pretty good reason for some optimism with these three guys that Marcus Freeman has put together, to after Tommy Rees's departure. At least for now, a much more stable feeling.
Yeah, and I think that is filling the slots or kind of filling the voids has produced some sorts of like stability. Like I feel good about it, but I'm a man of results, the hard facts. That's why I enjoy mathematics, statistics, analytics.
Very
the
pragmatic.
Numbers don't really lie to you. And so once we start seeing the actual results put on, paper or put on the field, that's where I'm going to feel even more confident.
Yeah. Mr. 2.0 said, I hate to harp on this and I'm pulling for Coach Parker, but if we did land Ludwig, the whole fan base would be excited right now rather than asking questions. And that is absolutely right. So, you would have had a coordinator with 2+ decades of offensive coordinator and quarterback experience rather than a relatively unproven offensive coordinator, even if he's going to have a pretty good quarterbacks coach coming in with him. And so it's just there are just enough questions to keep us guessing right now. And as we've said and you said earlier, Jess, who knows what we're going to see in the spring? And so really it's going to be who knows what we're going to get to see in the fall. I think we ended up with like 2 practices last fall. And otherwise, a lot of what we're going to find out is going to be found out in that Navy game in Dublin.
Yeah, and I mean, and really, what it boils down to is if they don't do well, all hell is going to break loose in those first 3 games. But if they do well, it's going to be it's Navy, Tennessee State, Central Michigan. Let's wait until we play the big boys at Ohio State. So to me, unless things tragically go bad in those first 3 games, I don't think people are going to feel confident or comfortable until after that Ohio State game. I think that's where a lot of people are going to draw their conclusions because, I mean, you know how it is. They do well in those first 3 games. Well, it's just going to be, that's how it should be, right? It's Central Michigan, Tennessee State, and Navy, 3 teams that aren't probably projected to be super great next season. And so I think Ohio State is really going to be that game where everyone kind of has a good feeling of good or bad what Jared Parker is going to be like.
Yep, I concur. All right, so former Notre Dame tight end Isaiah Foskey had some high praise for current Notre Dame defensive end Jordan Botelho at the NFL Combine this week. Foskey made some comments about him, and let's hear what he had to say.
For a big role since pretty much he stepped on campus. Yeah, Jordan Botelho is my guy. He shows that he's very versatile in pass rush. He can stop the run, and he's really like a menace to every single offensive line. He's really aggressive at a point of attack, and he can just dominate any tackle that he goes against.
So again, some pretty high praise. He can dominate any tackle he goes against. So how high, Jesse, should our expectations be for Jordan Botelho this season?
See, this is a tough one because someone's got to step in and fill the shoes at the defensive end position. And I think Jordan Botelho has the strongest case to do that. But at the same time, it's not like he's getting this like hype around him, right? So it's like we should almost be grateful for anything that he exceeds expectations just because it's not like, it's not like an Isaiah Foskey where there's a lot of hype and Foskey was going to be good. Botelho has the potential to be good, but it hasn't been proven on a consistent basis. And so I think that there should be hype and expectations for Botelho, but I also think at the same time, as fans, we should be appreciative of things that kind of exceed or go above and beyond those expectations at the same time.
Yeah. And Joe, as long as he keeps himself straight, Mr. 2.0, look good in the bowl game. Both true statements, I think. But
I do like the thing about him too is that Foskey mentioned is his ability to be a pass rusher, but also kind of drop off in what I'm known as those Viking kind of stunts by defensive ends where they're dropping off
Right.
in the flats
The
and
Viper.
disturbing
Yeah.
pass lanes, essentially.
Yeah, and I completely. We've always known that this guy has the ability, but a lot of it has to do with what's happening between the ears. You know, what has held this guy back in terms of where he is right now, because he's going into his senior season now, and we've only seen little flashes like here and there. We've seen him on special teams a couple of years ago. Yeah, he had a great bowl game because like 34 career games, 33 career tackles, 6.5 sacks. 2 of those 6.5 came in the bowl game. The other 2 came in the Syracuse game last year. You know, so it's like, again, this guy's been here forever, and we've kind of been waiting for him to be this guy. And so now here we are. I have a hard time, like if I went scale of 1 to 10, where should our expectations be? I would put them maybe 6 at the highest. I'm probably closer to 5. Just because I don't want to put too much, because again, he's going into year 4. We know that the ability is there, but he hasn't shown that he can keep himself on the field and be consistent enough to put him on the field. So see, like Derek wants to put it at a 9, 2.0 is saying 7. So he's a little bit higher than me. It's like, if you put too much expectation on this
You're
guy,
just going to be let down.
Up. Yeah.
That's, I guess what I was trying to get across is I think that he can be pretty good to like solid. I think his baseline for everyone should be solid to average. And then anything that's above that, we should be excited for. So that on the back end, we're not let down because we have too many high expectations going in.
At least make the consistent play. And then that other stuff.
Then we can step up making the game changing plays.
Right. I have a hard time, you know. See, now Joe is saying a disappointing 6. I guess my thing is like keep the expectations at least reasonable, and then kind of what you're saying. If he plays consistently, he's out there all the time, then everything else that comes on top of it is great gravy. Because I think that he can, you know, really make some big time spectacular plays. But I hate to put too much hype on a guy who again has 6.5 sacks in his first 3 years, and 4 of them came in 2 games last year.
Right.
So after Mike Brey coached his last game at Purcell Pavilion, do you have a favorite Brey Notre Dame men's basketball moment from the last 23 years?
You know, it's hard to like pinpoint a moment, right? Because I mean, we're talking about a 4-time conference coach of the year, the most winningest coach in Notre Dame basketball history. He was the 2011 coach of the year, the Elite Eights in 2015 and 2016. And you know, I just think overall what Mike Brey is most remembered for is just honestly, he's a good guy of like good character. He's just overall a nice guy. And I appreciate the way he ran his teams. You know, Notre Dame always came out and played defense really well. Notre Dame often, you know, ran a lot of offensive sets that got late into the shot clock and put up highly efficient, shots. And so I respect Mike Brey's formula, I think, more than anything, because he made a formula and he adapted his formula in order to kind of tweak and win, you know, depending on what was going on. But I guess just like if I had to put it down to one moment, it was that game against Kentucky in which they probably should have went on to the Final Four. And that was his best shot. That was his best team. And I think it's sad and you know, kind of fun at the same time because it was a great run and it was a great team seeing, you know, Grant and Connaughton and, you know, the others that played so well, Demetrius Jackson. I'm pretty sure Bonzi was on that team, if I'm not mistaken. And so it was just a good team to watch, but it was also sad because that was their best shot and they probably should have beat Kentucky in that game and went on to the Final Four. And they only have one Final Four appearance in school history. And they could have, you know, you could have probably made the case that they had a strong shot of going to the national championship that year. And that's the one thing the men's program doesn't have is a national championship appearance, let alone a national championship trophy. So it's got to be that game against
Final
Kentucky.
Four in more than 40 years.
Right. Yeah. It's got to be that game against Kentucky, even though it was so spectacular. It was also kind of so sad at the same time.
Yeah, I think mine is how that season wound down from the ACC championship, beating Duke and North Carolina in back-to-back years, doing that, making that run into the NCAA tournament. And if I remember right, that was in Cleveland as well. Those games were in Cleveland that year, I believe, the Kentucky game. It just such a great run to finally see that happen after all those years of getting to the tournament, getting knocked out in the first or second round, an occasional Sweet 16. My second year, I was doing the Notre Dame women's games, and the women were Phil, Tennessee in the NCAA tournament, and the men were down in Greenville, South Carolina, playing in the NCAA tournament. They played, who was it in the first round? Charlotte, I believe it was, and then they played Duke in the second round. They had Carlos Boozer, and that was Notre Dame was total. And so the thing worked out perfectly because, like, the women, played one night, the men played the next, and both of them, ended up winning their first game. So there was like a small group of us that rented a car. We would drive down to South Carolina. We watched the men's games and all that stuff. They came so close that year to beating Duke, and I believe Duke ended up. They might not have gone to the final. They lost to Indiana. That was the year that Indiana ended up getting to the national championship game and losing to Maryland. So that was a lot of fun. And like what I got to experience in person, I'd say the 5 overtime game against Louisville. That was at least the end of the night, as my old buddy Bobby and I have talked about before. The game for roughly 38 minutes was a complete snoozer. Louisville was winning most of the night. It looked like Notre Dame never had a chance, but then Jaron Grant woke up, started bombing, and got the game tied, got to overtime. They went to 5 overtimes and ended up beating Louisville in 5 overtimes. That's definitely my favorite Purcell memory of Mike Brey.
Someone brought up Maui Brey. I thought that was
Maui Brey good too. Stymie bringing up Maui Brey. That was a good call as well. So the latest rumored name to emerge to replace Mike Brey at Notre Dame is Iowa's Fran McCaffrey. You buy Fran McCaffrey at Notre Dame, Jesse?
So Fran McCaffrey.
Buy or sell Fran McCaffrey.
So I can't say that I am, up to date on my college basketball coaches, especially
I'll tell you
McCaffrey, but I know he was an assistant at Notre Dame for 11 years.
He was.
And I know that he's, the Big Ten is a hard conference. Iowa has had some good seasons in the Big Ten, competing with teams like IU, Purdue of recent, Ohio State. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know, who's the best of the best in the Big Ten over the last 10 years, but it's a hard conference to play in, just like the ACC. It's a Power 5 conference. It's hard to play in. He's been tenured there for a long time. He's coached at Notre Dame before. I don't say that I would be disappointed with the hire. And I think that would be the number one kind of takeaway for me is I wouldn't be overall disappointed with the hire.
I mean, he's got a nice resume. He's won at least 20 games, 8 times, taken Iowa to the NCAA tournament 6 times in 12 years. He's never gotten past the second round, so that's kind of a nut. But the biggest thing with McCaffrey is just his demeanor on the court. Like he was the one, I don't know if you remember seeing a week or so ago.
Oh, was he the guy staring down the referee?
Doing the stare down with the referee.
Throw him out the window. I'm selling. That's all you need. I forgot that was the Iowa coach. And then he just kept stepping closer to the ref. Yes. And it was like, who was going to blink? One of the top awkward moments I think I've seen in college basketball. And I've never been a fan of that kind of coach. Right. Who's just staring down the ref with that kind of intent. Like you just wanted a reaction. You wanted something to happen.
Right.
And so if that's the way you're going to handle yourself, yeah, I'm sold. Throw out everything I just said.
Derek asked what his buyout is. It's like it's going to be the punchline to everything pretty much going forward. What's the buyout? Notre Dame women projected right now as a 3 seed for the NCAA tournament, heading into tomorrow's ACC tournament opener for them against North Carolina State. Now, you have to be a 4 seed or better on the women's side to host NCAA tournament games. So
the first 2 rounds, right?
Yes.
64-32.
Correct. So what do you think needs to happen for them this weekend to feel comfortable that they're going to host here in 2 weeks when the selections are announced?
Before it's kind of crazy that I think that they should be a lock to host no matter what. And I think it's kind of ridiculous that they are kind of fighting for an overall 3 seed right now, because I think that they could be seriously contending for a 1, if not a 2. And I have rationale to back this up. UConn and Virginia Tech are ranked higher than Notre Dame in the rankings right now. And last time I checked, Notre Dame finished
and they've got both of
first.
them as 2 seeds,
Right?
Because
And
they did the not to cut you off, but they did the top 16 reveal February 23rd. So I think that was like 2 weeks ago today, or a week ago.
About a week ago.
A week ago, yeah, a week ago today. February always throws me off, with the lack of days and all that stuff. But so they've got both UConn and Virginia Tech, who, as you said, as 2 seeds. Notre Dame beat both of them. They've got Notre Dame on the 3 line.
Virginia Tech makes absolutely no sense. Notre Dame is first in the regular season ACC, and they beat Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech.
Right.
How is Virginia Tech ahead of them? It makes absolutely 0 sense. So I'm more frustrated that Notre Dame isn't being considered a 2 seed, let alone a 3 or a 4 seed. I think they should be hosting no matter what, as long as they take care of business and don't get embarrassed by someone. Make it to probably the championship game. At worst, you would want to see them get knocked out in the Final Four of the ACC tournament. But I think as long as they handle their business, this shouldn't even be really a conversation, in my opinion. I think that they should be fighting for more. They should be a 2 seed on the cups of how can we get the 1 seed? If we can win this ACC tournament, could we potentially land a number 1 seed overall? And that's not just biasy. I just think that's facts. It's ridiculous. UConn has worse losses than Notre Dame, and they beat UConn. Notre Dame's losses, their worst loss is on the road at North Carolina by 10 points. Their other losses are by margin are 2 to 5 points, and those are ranked teams. So I'm just kind of confused overall.
That's the thing. Their worst loss is to North Carolina State, who was ranked at the time they beat them. North Carolina State is not ranked now, but the other, they lost to, as you said, North Carolina on the road as well. They lost to Maryland on a buzzer beater shot.
And everyone
Maryland
loves the Big Ten and Maryland and IU in women's basketball, because it seems like every time they lose, there's no real consequences.
Here's what it comes down to, though, because, again, Notre Dame's got a head-to-head win over UConn. The NCAA, in that early reveal a week ago today, had UConn on the 2 line, as you just said, ahead of Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame has a head-to-head, but UConn has more bad losses. They have lost to St. John's. They have lost to Marquette. And there was one other that I can't think of right now as well. They lost to St. John's at home. And the NCAA protects UConn because UConn is a cash cow. They want UConn to host, and so they've got UConn higher, even though Notre Dame shows up at number 6 in the net rankings. I would just say I'm fairly comfortable, that they're going to host no matter what, but you just never know with the NCAA.
Well, it's they're already skewing them enough. So it's is one bad thing just going to knock them out of potentially hosting, because for whatever kind of, I call it a mini vendetta that they have, because it logistically just doesn't make sense on paper that Notre Dame is behind UConn and Virginia Tech at the moment, who are, I guess, locks kind of at the 2 seed right now at this moment.
Yes. One final question for tonight. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Aaron Rodgers is telling his critics to tune it out if they think he's being a diva about what he's going to do with his future.
It's contradictory that Aaron Rodgers is telling people to tune it out, because Aaron Rodgers goes on podcasts and he brings camera crews to his, darkness retreat and all of these things. So if you don't want people to perceive you as a diva, then don't do diva things.
A diva.
Those things go hand in hand. If you don't want people to think of you as a diva and, your contract situation as being diva-like, well, then don't go out and be a diva about it.
Right.
So to me, it's very contradictory that he would make a statement like that. But am I surprised? No, because it's on par with just about everything that Aaron Rodgers does.
It's just, it's like he's perfected basically being a diva. He's perfected the ways to stir up drama and bring everything. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to retire. I don't know what I'm going to do. You trade, blah, blah, blah. It's like, stop doing the interviews if you don't want it. He loves the fact that people are talking about it. You know, that's all it comes down to with this guy. If he doesn't want people talking about it, stop going on these different podcasts and shows. Stop doing the McAfee show every week and stirring the pot, because that's all he's doing. He loves the drama. He loves the fact that people are talking about him. That's all it is.
Yeah, and like Joe said, it's just always been about Aaron Rodgers. It's that smugness always on his face. He's always been uber talented. Like, I respect him as a quarterback, especially, you know, he beat the Cowboys twice in the last decade with probably two of the best Cowboys teams that they've had. He's been a Cowboy killer in the playoff. It hurts to say, and I think that's probably why, you know, there's layers of why I don't enjoy Aaron Rodgers, but it's just what it is. He's just always been smug. He can never just be, you know, appreciative of his, you know, what he's done and kind of how good he is. It's just everything's on par with Aaron Rodgers. He's built up this persona of himself, and rather than kind of maybe, you know, doing things to get people off the ledge of who they think he is, he does things to further or solidify how people, you know, how people perceive him.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And we will leave it at that tonight. Appreciate you joining us tonight. Hit the like button on your way out. And of course, subscribe, rate, review, and
2:00
comment.
tomorrow.
Huh?
Women's game. First
Women's
game
game is at 2 tomorrow. And I don't even know if I told you, I forgot to mention this at the start of the show. We're going to start our Friday rapid fire show at 6:00 tomorrow night.
Oh, you're on double duty tomorrow. I didn't realize that.
Yes.
You're going to go straight from the game to double duty.
Do that. Come back here. Get ready. We'll do the show tomorrow night at 6. So be ready for that. Are you good? You'll be here?
I'll be there.
Okay. Sounds good. Peace. We will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.